Okay, so welcome aboard the Starship Enterprise. Just going to give a brief little tour of the interior of the boat and some of the interior systems. This will help you guys when you're doing your delivery. So let's go and just start in the forward cabin, which is here, the V berth. Currently we have a bunch of cushions and the cockpit table set up over here, but of course if you want the space for someone to sleep, you can always move everything over to the side, or there is some open room in the storage down below. So in here we have, of course, storage on the sides. The forward one on the starboard side has things like water cannons, which we call phasers, because water fights do happen in races and things like that. There's also, sail bags and sail ties and things like that, all stuffed in there. The sails are all on the spars. Same thing with this one here, storage, sail ties, things like that. All the way to the back of the forward cabin. On the starboard side, there's a locker here. Inside this locker is life jackets. There's like 12 or 14 of them in there. Each one has a whistle, each one's labeled, and so on. In case of emergency, you would open up that cabinet and go for it. On the port side, miscellaneous storage in the front. Over here, we have most of the safety equipment. That includes your jack lines, safety lights, harnesses, and inflatable PFDs. That's all in there. That's kind of like your emergency, your other emergency locker. And of course over here, this locker right here on the port side, in the back of the forward cabin, that's mainly just open storage. So you can put clothes. There's some hanging, some drawers in there. You're able to put whatever you need in there. Okay, so now out to the center cabin. On the starboard side to T is our seating. Lots of storage over there. On the forward one, we have replacement batteries, like D size and C's and double A's and so on. There's also replacement, there's hats in there and whatever kind of little things you need. There's also some lights that'll go on the bimini in case you're hanging around at night. In that back one, there is some sailing gear. I think there's an extra vang, some blocks, and so on. The great thing about this is that you can see the piano hinge there. That will flip over, go into a little hole there, and it will become a double berth. The beautiful thing about it, it's actually very, very roomy. You don't need a lee cloth because the table will kind of hold you in place. The filler cushion that goes in there is actually right now in the aft cabin. You'll see that in a bit. The table, of course, both sides come up. There's locks on either side, and there's legs that come out to hold it in place. In here is some liquor storage, and I believe there's some rum in there and whatever else. Feel free to partake. And of course, there's extra bottle storage next to little plush Spock on that side. On this side, we have, on the port side, seating. There is no lee cloth here, but you certainly can rig one up. You, of course, have the bar there for navigation, and there's a little tie-off over here if you wanted somebody to sleep here. But again, between the forward cabin, the aft cabin, and the other side, you'd probably be just fine. In this cabinet here is where we keep the GPS plotter and a couple of other little supplies. In another video, I'll show you how to hook that up, and so you could see where you are. I'm also going to be adding Southern Florida charts to the GPS plotter. Over here are fans. They're Carfamo fans. They can go for, I think it's like 500 hours on a full set of deep batteries. So they're great, actually, if you're sleeping in the cabin, it's a little muggy, whatever. Blowing one of these things on you all night long is actually very, very comfortable and enjoyable. These two bigger things are actually mini air conditioners. And what you can do with those is you can fill them with some water on the sides, and they use a like a cell phone, either charger or a cell phone battery pack, you know, like an external charger. And you can actually run those for about 8 hours on low, and they're great personal air conditioners. You need to have it like right near you, but on a really hot day, it's actually very, very nice. Just be careful when putting them away that that it must be empty, or pull the the seating aside so that you can put them in, because they really you don't want them to get the interior get wet. The water tank, if you tilt it, will be a problem. In this storage here, we've got a complete toolkit. That's that black case, and that's everything: screwdrivers, there's a hammer, there's wrenches, all sorts of things. That's all the tools are there. There's also flags for display that can go on the bow and the stern and up the mast and so on. Little display flags, and there's also a little thing there for different electrical connections should something come loose. Now we're going to go over here to the chart table. We'll kind of go through these systems completely. Of course, inside the chart table, there's a few charts. There's also some supplies and things like that you may need. I'll be adding some Florida charts in there as soon as UPS delivers them. And then over here is our main board. Of course, we got pencils over here on the right. If you do need to draw on charts, please use pencils only, and of course erase your marks when you're done. Here's all the switches for ship system. Of course, masthead light, bow light, foredeck light, running lights, so on. Communication is the VHF radio. Entertainment is the car stereo, which I don't even use anymore. I just have play my iPod through a speaker. And then the pressure water pump, which I'll go into also. Of course, we got the autopilot. The warp core is basically a Bluetooth speaker here, and that's a charging thing. So when the batteries are on, you could actually charge the Bluetooth speaker. When it's running, it makes all cool little lights and stuff. It's kind of good, and it's great sound. The weather display, when you click on the weather, you will get this display working. Let me turn it on. And over here, you can see temperatures indoors. Wow, it's hot in here, 90 degrees. And outdoors, it's 85 outside. There's a little sensor in the cockpit. Gives you the time and the highs, the lows, and you get an idea of if rain's coming or whatever else. It's kind of a little barometer there. That's the weather. Nav display is this area right here. There's an iPad that will go here. And if you want through the Raymarine, you could actually repeat the information that's on the Raymarine over here. And the nav display is actually the charger, which is this lightning cable here. That's good for running an iPad. It's also good for charging a phone if you want. That's all fine. That is that switch. Another good place to charge a phone, of course, if you already have the cable and everything, is right here. There's two plugs. They are strong enough to charge an iPad, not just phones, and that is pretty much always on when the battery is on. And then of course, bilge pump. There's no automatic bilge pump on board. I just never feel comfortable with those, but just turn the bilge pump on. It's actually pretty quick. It'll pump the boat out very, very quickly. Down here is our battery. You have the Boat US, of course, membership card. We're covered through June of 2020. And then here is your battery display. So at any time you can click here and see what's going on. So right now it's 12.95 volts. We're losing a half an amp right now through the system. The other 12.97, that's the engine batteries. And of course you could click this and you can get more information. Time to alarm, amp hours remaining, amp hours used, and so on. Very nice little thing. All right, so over here, and anytime you want to see what the voltage is on either of the banks, you can click here for main power, or click here for auxiliary power, or the engine batteries. Here are your speed, depth, and wind. The wind repeater appears to be broken, so you really need to, I think this will work on deck, but it will not work down below. Pretty cool. You just turn one on and then they both come on. These of course remove, and they can go on deck. There's clips up on deck. Okay, so up here is your main battery switches. So we have the house bank, the engine bank, and a combine to join them together. The engine battery is not all that strong. I've tried adding one, but still not great. So there's times if you've been using the boat for a full day and they're not combined, you might have to, flip that on to get the engine running. If there is more than 12.9 volts going into the system, it'll actually combine the batteries so that they'll all get charged. And you'll know that's working by this little light over there. That switch, by the way, is not hooked up yet, but that little light will tell you if the ACR, automatic charging relay, is enabled. One of the things I also added when you have a choice between shore power or boat power in terms of AC. So when you're on shore power, obviously you would take this switch here and you would leave it in the down position where it is now, and then turn on shore power after everything is connected. If you're on boat power, the engine's running, and you want to use the outlets on board, you can flip this up and turn on the inverter to get the inverter. Before you do that, though, you need to actually switch it all on. So the first step, of course, is to enable it. Okay, and again, the engine must be on, the engine must be running, because these inverters do take a lot of power. So you turn the inverter on, you enable the inverter here, and then you turn it on here. Okay, and then of course once it goes on, you'll get a display. This actually goes back into here and will enable all your outlets, water heater, and so on. Eventually we're going to have air conditioning over here, but that's probably going to be once we get to Florida. And that's that. When you're on shore power, you could of course turn on the battery charger, which is there. That should automatically go on. It's brand new installed. There's Admiral Bear, by the way. So that should work perfectly, but I haven't had a chance to test it yet. One last thing, because the engine battery and the house batteries are different chemistries, using the charging system right now, until I wire it a little bit differently, will not operate correctly. What it'll do is the volts will just keep climbing to the point where you're cooking the batteries. So what I like to do, and what I recommend doing, when you're on shore power, you're using the battery charger to top everything off, keep everything going, or run lights and refrigerator or whatever else on shore power. Then what I recommend doing is turning off the ACR, and that switch is right there. Okay, and then you just flip it in the off position. You'll see that light go off, and that'll disconnect the combined charging, and then it'll just charge the house bank. Charge the house bank alone. You could use everything, lights, refrigerator, all of it to your heart's content. That's a 30 amp charger over there, and that should be more than enough juice to run anything and everything that you want to run. Before you depart and you unhook shore power, turn that switch back on, start up your engine. Shut off shore power first. Turn that back on, start up your engine. Then the ACR will click back on, and everything will be just fine. Okay, so let's go into the head. Okay, as you can see, everything's here. We have fresh water there in that tank. The holding tanks do have water in them. I think the front tank is empty right now, or close to it. You're probably not going to want a lot of weight in the bow, so you may want to keep it empty. But of course, if you decide you do want to use it, then by all means, there's a fill up on deck, and just fill it up. The pressure water pump, it will, I don't think it'll really run a shower all that well, but it will run water out of the faucet if you need it. It's a low little stream. Maybe I should get a better pump, or so on. Here's the head. It's electric. And basically to flush, you turn clockwise for about 3 or 4 seconds. Then you turn counterclockwise for 3 or 4 seconds. And that should be it. It should well be dry. And of course, if it's not, then do it again. Toilet paper is inside there. If you want to switch to overboard or a holding tank, that is in that panel behind the seat is that valve switch. I will have it set to pumping overboard by the time you guys leave. So you won't have to touch it again until you get into the Intercoastal Waterway, or back into when you finish your trip in Venice or any of your stops along the way. Inside here, that cabinet, there is actually a solar shower. If you want to put some water in there, put it up on deck, and you could run the shower through this hatch here into the shower, and that's actually a great way to take showers if you guys need to. And there's extra supplies and things like that in those cabinets. Okay, underneath the steps here, you have access to the engine from 3 points. Over here, you have front access, then you have side access, and then in the back, you have back access. And also in the back, you have a panel to get to the stuffing box, which was just repacked. So over here, you have access to your oil change pump. You have access to take off your flywheel for your water pump and so on, and everything is very, very serviceable. It's a Beta 30 engine. It's only about 3.5 years old. Very, very easy to service. On this side over here, you will find your dipsticks on the top of the engine, oil filter, fuel filter, and so on, all there. Throttle connections and shift connections are actually there in the back. Again, very, very easy to service. And of course, the back of the engine, you have access to the strainer, the zinc, and so on. And I'll show you where these supplies are. Next, we have the galley. Again, the faucet is connected to the holding tanks. And if you want fresh water, you can fill this thing up. I do fill it up with a hose before we ever go on a journey. That's always seems to be the best way to get like real good, water to wash your face or do whatever you need. Various bits of storage in here. Inside this one is, of course, a bunch of plates. There's some knives here. There's plenty of storage here. This is all empty, which you can fill with your own food. Of course, back there's some space to put lots of food. I've gone away for, a week or change and kind of filled up this area with different dry stuff and everything and had plenty to eat. In here is our fridge. Whatever's there, feel free to partake in whatever's left there. There is a freezer built in, and to turn it all on, anytime the battery switch is on, it is capable of going on, and you will see this little flip open thing here, and then just turn it on, and that'll get it going. Word of warning, it takes about 6 to 8 amps depending on how hard it's working, so I tend to only put the fridge on when the engine is running, just to make sure that I'm not completely wearing everything down. I'm a little neurotic about battery power, probably more than I should be. I've got 400 something amp hours to work with, but even still, I like to keep things pretty high off. Of course, there's the solenoid turn-off switch, an extra 12-volt plug there, and of course an outlet, which goes on when you have all the outlets. This is a plug-in coffee pot, does like 1 cup at a time. So if you're using the inverter or something like that, you could do that. There's also in the stove, there are pots, pans, and another coffee pot, and so on, for preparing foods and coffee and so on. You could do instant coffee, you could do whatever, and just heat up the water. I haven't used the stove ever, actually. I'm sure it does work. It did light up the last time I tried. But if you have a problem, the stove top works. The oven, again, I haven't used in quite a while. The thing about the stove top, because I don't use it that much, it does take a little effort to get it running. So what you do is you, of course, you turn on the gas outside. You use one of the lighters and, kind of like push this in, turn to the right, turn to the left, sorry, to get the flow going, and kind of with the other hand, shoot the, the lighter. It'll take a little bit of time. You'll see it light up, but then when you let go of the knob, it'll go off. If you do it for a little while, it seems to open up the lines, I guess, and it'll start working. So, a few seconds, just light it again and so on. All three do work. The last time I used them, which was last season, and you should be fine with that. Under here is some cleaners. We also have under here the basically the ACR, which you can see there, the solar controller, which is there, and this is the manifold for the fresh water system. So the forward one is port, the middle one is forward tank, and the third one is starboard tank. And you should only have open one at a time. Otherwise, one drains faster than the other. It's pulling in air, and it gets to be, very bubbly and whatever else. Doesn't really work well. Just one at a time until one is empty. Then you just go down there, switch one off, switch the other one on. Very, very simple. Foot pump is not connected to anything. It doesn't work. So, I just disconnected the hoses because it's just constantly getting in the way. So that is off. So don't worry about, don't even think about that part. All right, now we go into the beautiful aft cabin. There's that extra cushion for that starboard settee to make that a complete bed. There's some extra cushions here. This bed, by the way, it's a little MRI-ish, of course. It's kind of deep in there. But this bed has a Froley sleep system and a memory foam mattress. It is extremely comfortable. All you need to do is bring your sheets and you are set. Okay, so let's go back here. Let me just go over a few things back here. Here's the back access to the engine, and of course access to the stuffing box is down there. A little magazine rack here where I keep the binoculars. There's a little jacket rack here with a hat and so on. On this side of the boat, you have 4 cabinets. 1, 2, 3, 4. Basically, everything in there is, most of it is engine supplies. There's tons of oil. I think there's 12 quarts of oil on board right now. All the filters, replacement belts, wires, a little zinc for the engine. There's a few of those. Impellers, it's all there, it's all labeled, and the engine is extremely easy to service. You've got hatches on 3 sides and the top. This, by the way, if your iPad does fit in that rack that we showed before, that whole rack is magnetic, it pulls off. You could actually attach it to this, and you could watch iPad movies while in bed and relaxing. We've actually, my wife and I have watched several movies when cruising. On this side, you have a locking, you have a closet which is pretty open, and you could hang some stuff in there. And in these two, in the forward one, in the aft one is pillows. Pretty good plush pillows. And in this one, it's pretty open, so you can store clothes or whatever you need in here. These 3 are mainly electrical supplies. You're going to find some wires, you're going to find crimpers, and whatever else you may need to do any electrical work on board. This last one there, that's actually not storage. That's where the guts of the refrigerator is. That's all in there. So there's really no reason to go in there. That's all working. And the refrigerator was put in brand new last year. Last thing over here, by the way, by the chart table, there's various different tapes, with electrical tape, duct tape, sail patch tape. There is screws and hose clamps, and whatever else you may need is down there. There's mainly tools down there. Lastly, over here behind the steps, we have a flare gun kit, a flare, an electronic flare, which is pretty new. I bought it last year. Extra hoses. There's a first aid kit back there. And then here are just an extra bunch of set of tools, which I use a lot more often than that black case over there, because these are just easy to grab and take. But if you need something specific, you go in the black case. There's extra McLoop here. You got some sail ties here. You've got your horn, hex wrenches, and whatever else. Lastly, over here, we've got a small binocular set. We've got a big pocket here, which holds the emergency tiller. An extra umbrella in case someone wants some relief from the sun. A couple of broomstick Here is your boat hook, which extends, and boat knife. That's very sharp, be careful. And of course, the storage for your 3 winch handles. So I think that pretty much covers it. The one thing that we ask, of course, if you got dirty gear and dirty bags and dirty shoes, whatever, let's keep it off of the nice bright colored cushions, even though you'll probably see some stains here and there from us. But let's try to keep the boat as clean and neat as possible. And that pretty much concludes this tour of the inside of the Starship Enterprise. Of course, a couple of signs there. When all else fails, try doing what the captain suggested. That's a leftover from my racing days. And of course, a dedication plaque, just giving some details about the boat. And that is about it. Thank you for watching.